What if the best British war stories aren't the ones plastered across history books, but the ones buried deep in dusty archives? The silver screen once echoed with grit, courage, and irony in films that faded before they were ever celebrated. Yet ask any veteran who's seen it all, and they'll tell you some of these forgotten reels hit harder than any blockbuster. From quiet heroism to bitter truth, here are 12 British war films that veterans say deserve far more respect than they ever got. Number 12. The Long Day's Dying, 1968. It begins not with glory but confusion. Three British paratroopers stranded behind enemy lines, wandering through a silent landscape where victory means survival, and survival means losing a piece of yourself. The Long Day's Dying isn't about the big speeches or the waving flags, it's about the hollow echo that follows when the noise stops. Director Peter Collinson stripped away the pageantry of war to show something raw and unsettling. The dialogue feels fractured, almost poetic, as if every line is being whispered from a haunted memory. The camera doesn't flinch, it lingers on hesitation on the faces of men who can't remember why they're still fighting. Released during a decade when anti-war sentiment was high, the film fell between audiences. Too dark for traditional war buffs, too brutal for the art house crowd, but veterans recognize something familiar in it. The fatigue, the doubt, the strange calm that follows chaos. Over time, critics have reevaluated it as one of the most psychologically authentic depictions of wartime exhaustion. It's not about victory, it's about the long, lonely trudge toward the end of a very bad day. Watching it now, you realize why soldiers admired it. It didn't lie to them. It just looked them in the eye and said, I know. Number 11. Orders to Kill, 1958. Imagine being sent on a mission where your success depends on taking the life of someone who's done nothing wrong except be on the wrong side of history. Orders to Kill dares to ask the question few war films had the nerve to touch. What does duty do to a conscience? Anthony Asquith directs this haunting drama about an American agent in wartime France tasked with eliminating a suspected double agent. But when he meets the target, a kind, unsuspecting man who trusts him completely, the mission twists into an unbearable moral maze. It's quiet, almost claustrophobic. The tension lives in the silences in the eyes of men forced to choose between obedience and humanity. There are no grand explosions, just the ticking clock of guilt. When it released, audiences expecting heroics didn't know what to make of it. Some even called it too slow. Veterans, though, recognized something else: the film's honesty about what orders really mean when you're alone with them. Today it stands as one of Britain's most courageous explorations of moral conflict in wartime. No patriotic speeches, no neat endings, just a soldier facing the unbearable truth that sometimes doing the right thing feels exactly like betrayal. Number 10. Invasion Quartet, 1961. If The Dirty Dozen had been British scrappier and slightly unhinged, it might have looked like Invasion Quartet. This war comedy drama follows a group of so-called unfit officers who refuse to sit out the fight. What follows is a wildly offbeat mission behind enemy lines that mixes gallows humor with courage under absurd circumstances. Directed by J. Lewis, the film balances its dry British wit with a surprising sense of melancholy. Underneath the laughs, there's a deeper truth. War isn't only fought by the perfect and the brave, it's fought by the stubborn, the broken, and the overlooked. Critics at the time didn't quite get it. They called it tonally confused, unsure whether to laugh or cry. But that's precisely what makes it so human. Veterans often mention it for its honest portrayal of misfits who never stop trying, even when everything goes sideways. There's a beautiful irony here. The film about forgotten heroes became forgotten itself. Yet Invasion Quartet captures something rare, a blend of humor and heartache that makes you laugh one moment and ache the next. In its own strange way, it proves that courage doesn't always come from the strongest. It often comes from those who refuse to be left behind. Number 9. The Silent Enemy, 1958. Underwater silence can be as loud as a gunshot. The Silent Enemy takes that eerie truth and builds an entire film around it. Based on the real exploits of Lionel Crabb and the Royal Navy's underwater divers during World War II, it dives literally into the hidden war beneath the sea's surface. Directed by William Fairchild, this is not a flashy film, it's tactile and tense. Every bubble, every shadow under the water feels like it could explode into danger. Lawrence Harvey delivers a restrained performance, showing the calm control of a man who can't afford to panic. The film was a technical triumph for its time, using underwater cinematography that pushed the limits of the era's filmmaking. Critics admired its authenticity, but audiences moved on quickly, swept up by flashier post-war dramas. For veterans who worked in quiet, invisible roles, The Silent Enemy struck a chord. It celebrated unsung specialists, people who risked everything without recognition. Watching it now, you can feel that same quiet pride, that same eerie beauty in silence. It's a film that reminds you that not all wars are fought in noise. Some are fought in stillness. Heartbeat by Heartbeat. Number 8. Broken in the Wars, 1919. A century old and still heartbreakingly relevant. Broken in the Wars isn't about battles, it's about what happens after them. Released in the aftermath of World War I, this silent British drama follows a cobbler returning home to rebuild both his life and his dignity in a country struggling to recognize its veterans. In just under half an hour, it captures something monumental, the invisible war that continues long after the armistice. Directed by A.E. Colaby and starring Henry Ainley, it was among the earliest films to address the social reintegration of returning soldiers. Its imagery is powerful: prosthetic limbs, shuttered windows, families trying to smile through the weight of loss. No words are spoken, yet every frame feels like a cry for understanding. While it was praised upon release for its empathy and realism, it faded as cinema shifted toward escapism in the Roaring '20s. Veterans groups, however, never forgot it. Many used it as part of campaigns to raise awareness for veteran welfare. Today it stands as one of Britain's earliest and most sincere tributes to those who came home changed forever. It's not a spectacle, it's a statement, and that statement still matters. The war might end, but the wounds often don't. Number 7. The Small Back Room, 1949. Not every hero charges into battle. Some fight wars that no one ever sees. The Small Back Room, directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, dives into that hidden war, the one fought in laboratories, workshops, and minds pushed to breaking. Sammy Rice, played by David Farrar, isn't the soldier you expect. He's a scientist, brilliant but broken, tasked with defusing a mysterious German bomb while wrestling his own demons. The film's tension doesn't come from explosions, but from anticipation, the sound of a ticking clock, the silence before a decision, the weight of doubt pressing like gravity. Powell and Pressburger, best known for their vibrant color fantasies, stripped it all down here. The lighting is harsh, the atmosphere claustrophobic, the emotions real. When Sammy faces the bomb in the film's legendary final sequence, it's more than a technical challenge, it's a reckoning. Veterans have praised this film for portraying the inner battles that don't make it into history books. The fear of failure, the exhaustion of trying to be brave when no one's watching, it's all there. Critics called it too small upon release, but time has proven otherwise. The Small Back Room isn't small at all. It's massive in its humanity, a film that dares to say courage doesn't always wear a uniform, it sometimes hides behind a desk. Number 6. Dunkirk, 1958. Before Christopher Nolan turned Dunkirk into a modern masterpiece, Britain had already told that story with grit, realism, and heartbreak. The 1958 version of Dunkirk is quieter but no less powerful. Directed by Leslie Norman, it tells the evacuation not through sweeping aerial shots, but through human eyes, ordinary soldiers tired and terrified, waiting for rescue that might never come. John Mills and Richard Attenborough lead a cast that feels entirely authentic. There are no perfect heroes here, only men trying to survive chaos. Unlike later versions, this one leans into the exhaustion, the confusion, and the disbelief of watching an army crumble and regroup. It's not about triumph, it's about endurance. Veterans loved it for one reason: accuracy. The mud, the confusion, the endless waiting, it all rang true. The film doesn't glorify the retreat, it respects it. It understands that courage sometimes means simply holding on one more hour. Though overshadowed by newer, flashier productions, this Dunkirk remains one of Britain's most faithful wartime portraits. Watch it today and you'll feel its heartbeat, the slow, steady rhythm of survival against impossible odds. It's not about the spectacle of war, it's about the cost of staying human through it. Number 5. Guns at Batasi, 1964. Now here's a war film that takes place far from the trenches and hits just as hard. Guns at Batasi isn't about the Second World War, it's about what happens after. Set in a British Army outpost during an African revolution, it explores the clash between duty politics and moral conscience. Richard Attenborough shines as Regimental Sergeant Major Lauderdale, a man so loyal to military order that he starts to unravel when that order collapses. The tension builds inside the barracks as revolution brews outside, and suddenly the definition of enemy becomes painfully unclear. Directed by John Guillermin, the film has that rare quality of intelligence under fire. The dialogue crackles with wit and frustration while the confined setting turns the base into a pressure cooker. When it released, Guns at Batasi divided critics. Some called it talky, others called it profound. But veterans admired it for its honesty about authority and change. It wasn't about glory, it was about adaptation. Over the years, the film has aged remarkably well, partly because its questions haven't gone away. What happens when discipline meets doubt? When loyalty collides with morality? Guns at Batasi doesn't answer, it just stares right back at you, daring you to think. Number 4. The War Lover, 1962. Every war film has a pilot, but few have one like Steve McQueen's Captain Buzz Rickson. In The War Lover, war isn't just a backdrop, it's an addiction. McQueen's character loves flying, loves danger, and lives for the rush of combat missions. But beneath that thrill lies something hollow, a man defined by risk, not purpose. Directed by Philip Leacock and based on John Hersey's novel, the film pairs McQueen with Robert Wagner in a tense rivalry both in the air and in love. What makes it memorable isn't the dogfights, it's the psychology. Rickson isn't a hero. He's a man consumed by his own restlessness, and the war gives him the excuse to feed it. Audiences in the 1960s weren't ready for that kind of honesty. They wanted heroes, not thrill seekers. But veterans recognized him. They'd met versions of Rickson, the adrenaline junkies who couldn't switch off even when the war ended. Cinematically, it's stunning. The aerial sequences are among the best of their time, but it's McQueen's silent intensity that sells the story. The War Lover isn't about winning, it's about the emptiness that comes when the fight becomes your only reason to live. That's what gives it its sting and its truth. Number 3. The Bofors Gun, 1968. War doesn't always mean grand strategy. It can be one endless night of tension. The Bofors gun traps its characters in a confined post in Germany where discipline, pride, and frustration start to tear everything apart. Starring Nicol Williamson, David Warner, and Ian Holm, the film unfolds like a slow burn. It's less about battles and more about the battle within between soldiers who've been pushed past the limit of obedience. Williamson gives a tour de force performance as a bullying sergeant who pushes his men too far, while Holm plays the private who can't take it anymore. Director Jack Gold builds a suffocating atmosphere. Every exchange feels loaded, every silence louder than words. The film's power lies in its realism. It feels like a play unfolding in real time, with no heroes and no easy answers. Upon release, critics praised its acting, but not its darkness. Audiences wanted adventure. This gave them disillusionment. Veterans, however, called it one of the most painfully accurate depictions of barracks life they'd ever seen. It's about pressure isolation and the quiet collapse of authority. In many ways, the Bofors gun isn't just a war movie, it's a warning. Sometimes the battlefield is just the room you can't leave, and the enemies are the thoughts that won't stop. Number 2. The Traitor, 1957. What happens when the war is over but the ghosts of loyalty still linger? The Traitor, directed by Michael McCarthy, turns the aftermath of war into a chilling mystery. It follows a former resistance leader who gathers his old comrades to uncover which one of them betrayed their unit years earlier. Part whodunit, part psychological drama. The film keeps its tension grounded in guilt and suspicion rather than gunfire. Donald Wolfett plays the haunted leader with Shakespearean weight, his voice trembling between rage and heartbreak. Every conversation feels like an interrogation, every memory a trapdoor. The film's brilliance lies in its restraint. It doesn't rely on spectacle, but on atmosphere. The war is over, yet everyone's still fighting in their heads. When it released, it barely made a ripple. Critics called it too slow. But to veterans who lived through the uneasy peace of post-war Europe, it struck a chord. The idea that betrayal could come from within that trust itself could be the final casualty felt all too real. Today, The Traitor stands as one of British cinema's forgotten gems, a film that trades glory for guilt and asks the hardest question of all. When the shooting stops, what kind of person are you left with? Number 1. The War Game, 1966. When The War Game first appeared, it wasn't even allowed to be shown on television. The BBC shelved it for 2 decades, calling it too disturbing, and they weren't wrong. Peter Watkins created a pseudo-documentary imagining what a nuclear attack on Britain would look like, and more importantly, how ordinary people would react. Shot in black and white with chilling realism, it blurred the line between fiction and reality so effectively that audiences thought they were watching a real crisis unfold. Though technically about a future conflict, veterans immediately recognized its power. It wasn't about politics, it was about human survival. The panic, the breakdown of order, the quiet despair, it all mirrored what they'd seen during actual wartime. The film went on to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary, even though it wasn't truly one. Critics eventually called it one of the most important British films ever made, but at the time it was buried, feared, and misunderstood. That's why veterans still mention it with reverence. The War Game reminded the world that war isn't just fought with weapons, it's fought with fear, memory, and the fragility of human endurance. It's less a movie and more a mirror, and it shows us something we might not want to see. So there they are, 12 British war films that dared to be honest, bold, and heartbreakingly human. They didn't have Hollywood's shine or studio hype, but they had truth, and truth lasts longer. Maybe it's time to give them the respect they earned in silence. Which one will you track down first? Drop your pick in the comments, hit subscribe for more hidden classics, and remember, sometimes the forgotten stories are the ones that teach us the most.